Wisdom. It's an incredibly valuable asset. Some would say more precious than gold. It's attractive, appealing, admirable. Conversely, a lack of wisdom is the basis of immaturity, blind spots, and bad decisions. Wisdom. It can be gained over time, but it can't be rushed. But wisdom can be shared. That's precisely what we are here to do right now. Today, we are here to hack wisdom, to distill it, to understand it, and to process it. Why? To get better at life. Welcome to The Main Thing. This is your new 9-minute podcast. I'm your host, Skip Lineberg, and I've set out to interview the wisest people I know. We'll see what we can learn from each one when they're faced with an incredibly difficult, soul-piercing question. A complete mental breakdown, loss of function, unable to speak or move. That describes the condition our guest, Shawn Lesser, found himself in 1 year ago. He fell apart, collapsed. In decades past, we would have called it a nervous breakdown. You'll hear all about it in just a few moments. As you might expect, Shawn will be talking openly about mental health. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. As Shawn has begun to heal and recover, to regain his mental health, he is intently and passionately focused on eliminating the stigma surrounding our discussion of mental health. In Shawn's case, he's particularly called to come to the aid of other men. He wants to elevate the conversation to help men recognize warning signs, and he wants to help men learn the skills necessary to come alongside and support one another. The best way to check in on a friend when we're concerned about or possibly worried about that person. These lessons, of course, apply to all of us, men and women alike. I dare say every single one of us has something valuable to learn today. Before we get into it, let me recognize our newest patron of the podcast. Shout out to Emily from North Carolina, who's now providing monthly funding to support our work. Thank you so much, Emily. Supporting patrons of our show help keep this pipeline of wisdom flowing. Plus, they get all kinds of cool bonus content, including our special Deeper Dive podcast, which we call The Whole Thing. These less edited, organic episodes contain more stories, more laughter, and more fun with our wise guests. Many minutes of extra conversation that typically don't fit into our 9-minute podcast package. If you're interested, if you'd like to help support this important work, you can learn all about becoming a patron by visiting patreon.com/themainthingpodcast. I'll put that link in the show notes so you can just click it to go right there. You'll see that levels of support begin for as little as $6 per month. Before I open up his mic and bring him onto the show, let me properly introduce our special guest. Shawn Lesser is a seasoned finance professional and social entrepreneur known for his work in impact investing and sustainable finance. He was previously the co-founder and managing partner at Big Path Capital, having played an instrumental role in shaping the firm's mission to catalyze the flow of capital towards sustainable and socially responsible investments. In this new chapter of his life, Shawn is a mental health advocate and co-founder of The Real. The organization's mission is to build a global community around mental health. He is especially focused on men's health because he sees a big need to come alongside and support men and their families. Born and raised in Brooklyn, Shawn comes to us today from Atlanta, where he resides with his family. Now settle in and get ready. In this special 20-minute episode of the Main Thing podcast, you will discover why Shawn Lesser is one of the wisest people I know. Shawn Lesser, welcome to the Main Thing podcast. So great to be with you this morning.
Likewise, Skip. I appreciate it.
Hey, Shawn, let's start with how we got connected. We're going to get into your fascinating story here in just a moment, but a little bit of housekeeping. We do this every show because this show has become this amazing family tree of connections. If you think back, how did you and I get connected?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was through Marcia Nelson. And I think she might have been a guest on your show before. But I know
Yeah.
Marcia from we'll get into kind of my old day job, where
Okay.
we put on a lot of different conferences and events, and she had participated in a bunch. So she's really terrific.
Fine human being, just salt of the earth. She was on episode 11. For folks who might not have listened, go back to episode 11. That's going way back to year one. Wow. And Marcia she's an incredible connector and so generous, always thinking about who she can help. Thank you, Marcia. Shawn, let's get into your story. For listeners, what I want to tell you about Shawn, what makes him so unique is he's not one of these people that go through life with this facade who's just pretending like everything's okay. He's authentic, he's real, he's vulnerable. Shawn, why don't you start your story for our listeners and tell us, what you were doing and then what happened?
So it was last September, and I was depressed. I was having trouble eating. I was having trouble sleeping, and I lost 40 pounds, which is terrific, but I was not on a diet.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And then it was December 14th. It was a Wednesday, and I was on a Zoom call and basically had, I don't know if it's a medical term, but a full mental breakdown where I wasn't really functioning. I could hardly speak and move, and I was also suicidal, telling my wife, I just don't want to be here anymore. Please, freaking kill me. This thing was growing. I think also it was growing in terms of like not really sleeping and not really eating. Eventually just kind of, crack, right? So that's where I was on that day in December.
Yeah, let's zoom in on the depression part for just a moment, because if you hear me like leaning in and getting really concerned and really passionate about this, I am very passionate about mental health and eliminating stigma and let's getting it out there in the open. What was your depression like? Were you withdrawing?
So the depression was a lot of times having a tough isolating. Having a tough time getting out. These are typical depression type symptoms. Not having trouble getting out of bed. Like you don't want to get out of bed. You don't want to go into the shower. You don't want to brush your teeth. You don't want to go out of the house. You kind of don't want to do anything. And on the other side, that's not how you kind of need to do those things. Right. And it was it was just a feeling that was growing.
Despondent, downcast.
Yeah. I wasn't, obviously I wasn't myself, right? With my friends, with my family, when you're in that state, you don't really want to talk to anybody. People are calling you and emailing you, and you're just like, please leave me alone. I don't.
Not responding.
Yes. I mean, we were responding, but just like not. It's funny because before that, I was like the guy that you'd email, and I'd email you back within 10 seconds.
Okay.
And so people were like, Shawn, usually you're the fastest response time in the world.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, I just can't. I can't handle it. So we went to the hospital, this Emory Hospital. I went to the emergency room, and basically they brought someone out on a Zoom machine, and they're like, hey, do you want to go to the psych ward? And at that time, I didn't really know what that meant. So the first thing they do is they search you, right? They're like, forks, knives, other things. They're basically a place so you don't harm yourself. So they just took away all those different things, which makes sense. So I was in there for 3 days. That's a whole other story, but I was in there for 3 days. Mm-hmm. And then I got out. I'm 54, married, with 2 kids. So my mom, my wife was at my house, and then my mom, she's 82. She lives in Long Island. So she came down to Atlanta. So she was with my wife. And basically they were on a 24-hour Shawn watch, taking 12-hour shifts, literally taking 12-hour shifts. Like
I would imagine everyone's just scared to death what's going to happen. They're worried about you. I get it.
Yes.
Very worried.
Yes. And then what happened is another guy comes into the story. So there's a guy, his name is Brent Hurd. So me and Brent, our kids played Little League Baseball together, not too far from here. So Brent's son and my daughter and my son played together on a team. And me and Brent were, like baseball buddies. We weren't like the best buddies, but you see somebody at a game and you kind of hang out, and then you go the next game, you just become friendly, right? And then Brent was also friendly with my wife. Not too friendly, but he was friendly with my wife.
Watch it, Brent.
Yes. So when this happened, my wife is like, hey, you need to contact, her name's Blanca. She's like, you need to contact Brent Hurd. And I'm like, why I got to contact that guy? I mean, I like him. Yeah. He's a good guy, but what does he know about this? And she just says she has a feeling. So my wife ended up texting Brent, basically saying, hey, Shawn's in a bad place, etc. And Brent came back right away and he asked the right questions. So he said, this is happening to a lot of guys. Is he in a safe place? Which are the right questions. Now, Brent's not a therapist, but he's been through something similar himself in the past. So I kind of put it in if people are familiar with like Alcoholics Anonymous and then you have a sponsor, Brent was kind of like my mental health sponsor, right?
I see. Sense. Yeah.
Where he would call me, check on me. We'd go for walks and things like that. Or I'd be like on the floor in pain, mental pain. And my wife would be like, you need to call Brent. He has the words.
So you met Brent, and what happened from there?
So what happened from there is I went away to 2 treatment centers, one in Weimar, California, and another one in Hollywood, Florida. The treatment centers it's a whole nother story. They're an interesting place, but they kind of take away your phone. You're there. I was gone for around 70 days. You're in therapy all day. They're doing other types of modalities and treatments there. So that was an interesting experience, and meeting a lot of people that you wouldn't normally hang out with, but somehow in those treatment centers, you come together as a community. So there's something strange about them, but there's also something magical about being in that setting.
For listeners, I'm looking at Shawn right now on screen, and he's wearing a ball cap that says The Real. It's all caps, big, bold. And my understanding is The Real is its mission is to help people. Yeah, how are you guys going about that? How are you and Brent helping people?
Sure. So this kind of think of 3 C's in a simple way. So one is we're having conversations. So let me just take a little step back. We've been having conversations across the country. We did it in Atlanta. We did it in Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, Greenwich, Connecticut, Southampton. We did it we did Chicago, and we're doing speaking engagements kind of across the country, and then doing some stuff globally. So the more we have these conversations in these groups, a couple of things happen, right? So it's also bringing down the stigma. And then when we share our story, other people feel comfortable to share their story. So it's also just helping guys, like think of when we were in Nantucket, at the end of the event, 8 guys in the back were sharing phone numbers, right?
There you go. Yeah.
So that really comes back to the second part, which is community, right? Because for sure, therapy is great, medication is great, but I think the thing that helped me the most is the community.
Shawn, I applaud that. The community part is not to be minimized, not to be taken lightly, because absent that, here's how I'm feeling. I'm troubled, I'm broken, and I'm alone.
Yes.
I'm struggling. Something's wrong with me. I don't know what, and I'm all alone. That's a horrible place to be. But when you and your advocates and your partners can come alongside men in that condition, then we can begin to make progress.
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do with the community, and we have about 300 members now, is give guys, mostly guys now, just a safe place where you can talk about this stuff and not feel judged. What also we do, Skip, is we have a lot of kind of Batman calls where our friend of a friend says, hey, this guy's in need. And we're just like, okay, let's get him on a call, right? Again, not a therapist, but can say, listen, I know where you are. I know you're in the darkness. Feels like it's never, ever going to end. But I'm going to tell you from firsthand experience that it does, even though you think it's not. So that happens once or twice a week.
Awesome. I have a couple male friends like that who on any given day flip a coin which one of us is struggling and the other is there to provide encouragement. Shawn, as we finish up on that topic, just the listener is like, oh my gosh, I need this. How can they get in touch with, how can they find your organization and get in touch with someone there at The Real?
Sure, I can go to the website. So it's thereal.biz. And then you can also sign up to be a member. It doesn't cost anything right now. We're figuring out what are we going to offer the members. One is a safe place. We'll probably have some other things that we're offering. But that's the best way to get in touch.
Awesome. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Hey listeners, today's episode is focused on mental health. You've heard Shawn talk about his depression, extreme stress, no interest in eating, difficulty sleeping, and his eventual breakdown. Who knows if Shawn could have avoided any of it, but one thing I do know, we have to learn to get better at caring for ourselves. I'm no exception. In fact, last month, I began a program of self-care, mindfulness, and relaxation with Wonder and Grow. Wonder and Grow guides you through natural spaces, interweaving mindfulness, movement, and sensory awareness experiences. Your senses awaken, you're more creative, you experience the healing properties of nature. Wonder and Grow is for all ages and backgrounds. They offer monthly events, workplace wellness, and much, much more. Wonder and Grow is a community of people who share a passion for nature and a desire to live a balanced, inspired, fulfilled life. Head over to wonderandgrow.org and find out how you can join the adventure. Mindful nature experience from Wonder and Grow. Start yours at wonderandgrow.org. Shawn Lesser, what's the main thing you've learned in your lifetime so far?
Sure, Skip. The main thing I learned in my lifetime so far is that the most important thing are relationships. I've made money, I've lost money, and how do you feel? But the times that I felt the best about myself and people around me is when I had good relationships, that I felt comfortable speaking with people, meeting people. Just to me, that's what life's about more than having stuff. Stuff's nice, terrific, wonderful, but that's really, it's the relationships. It's also kind of, on this journey, it was just interesting, just kind of playing it forward and just making new relationships with people. And I'm definitely helping people, but as I'm helping them, it's helping me. So the more relationships you make, it's really reciprocal on both sides. So that's what I would say.
The biggest treasure in life is relationships.
Yes.
More valuable than our stuff, more valuable than our financial holdings.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
Shawn, let's go back and provide a little more specific help. And I want to provide some guidance to listeners. Someone who's concerned about others, they want to be a good friend. They want to care and provide good support.
Yeah.
What are those warning signs? And then how could someone step in if a friend is indeed struggling and perhaps with depression or some other struggle? Could you talk to us a little bit on that note?
Yeah. So one is, it's kind of the signs. So not simple, but it's isolation for sure is a sign. I would say also changing, I didn't eat. It's either people eat a lot or they eat nothing. Like they don't want.
Okay.
And then I would say not isolation, but then being with people and they're not engaged how they usually are. You're not acting how you usually act. And usually, when you ask a guy that, they might say the words something like, yeah, I'm doing okay. So that's kind of a tell for guys. It's like when a guy says he's just, I'm doing all right, I'm okay. No, that's a guy talk for like, I'm doing pretty crappy, right? So there's these kind of signs and or they're not interacting socially how they usually do, right? And that doesn't mean
you mentioned response time, either whether it's email or callbacks or text responses.
Yeah. And I was I ended up at a 10. So you're trying to catch this when it's like a 2 or a 3. So those are some of the signs. And then what are some of the things that you can do? It's challenging. One is just kind of, and I do this with people all the time and they do it with me, just checking in on them. right? Because just some people, like you're saying, when they're in that space, you just feel like, dude, I'm all alone. No one feels like this. They don't know how I feel. No one's ever been there. So it's nice to have other friends check in with you, and also have friends be like, listen, dude, that happened to me. That happened to my mom. This isn't unusual. So you don't feel like, I'm just kind of some outliner kind of freak. No, this is happening. It's happening so much, but you're not hearing about it. Engage that person, even though they might not want to engage, right? So you're like, all right, I'm coming over. We're going to go for a walk, things like that. And then I would say, I'm go to see the medical professionals. These, you can only take it so far, and if people get to a higher level, they need greater guidance and help. So I've never said like I'm a therapist, but I can create community, and I could be, I could understand how people are feeling. I could be empathetic because I've been there. And you just send those texts every couple of days. But I hear what you're saying. You're like, but it's the opposite. You're saying like, I'm getting into that guy's business. On the other side, that guy, even though he might come off like, I don't want you to do that, it's BS. They actually want to be like, oh, somebody cares about me, right? That's what you're showing. Like, dude, I care about you, man. You're a good guy.
Yeah, we all struggle, and no one should struggle alone.
Exactly. Check on your friends. It's pretty easy.
Okay.
Or your loved ones. Just like, or you might have a sister that you haven't spoken to in a while. Just, hey, how's it going? Hey, I'm just calling you. I'm not calling you for any purpose. I'm just seeing what's up. Because you don't know where that person is at that time in place. You might be really kind of, I'm not going to say, kind of saving their lives in some cases. Just feel like, it's like I'm all alone, and then my buddy just checked on me, right? So that's you don't realize how powerful it is.
There's Shawn's assignment, his charge, his homework for each of us. Check on your friends.
Yeah, that's it. Not hard.
Shawn Lesser, thank you so much for coming on to the show, sharing your story, sharing your main thing wisdom. I can't thank you enough.
Likewise. All right, Skip. See you,
So long for now, Shawn.
Bye.
Wow, that goes by incredibly fast, doesn't it? Time flies when you're hacking wisdom. I hope you're left wanting more. Sync up with us again next time on The Main Thing for 9 more minutes of wisdom.